5 shots, 5 kills. 10 seconds of perfect, lethal silence. They watched the woman from the med tent, the one they called the doll, trade her cleaning rags for a high-caliber rifle and rewrite the rules of war. Outpost Kestrel was a jagged scar carved into the arid, rocky highlands, a place where the wind howled with the fury of a forgotten god and the sun beat down with relentless hostility. Dust, fine as powdered bone, coated everything, mixing with the smells of diesel, sweat, and the faint coppery tang of old blood that clung to the medical tent like a shroud. Inside that canvas sanctuary of controlled suffering, Dr. Aris Thorne moved with a quiet, almost unnerving grace. At 30, she possessed a stark classical beauty that felt jarringly out of place. Her long, auburn hair was always pulled back into a severe, practical bun, exposing a pale, intelligent face dominated by piercing, emerald green eyes. Those eyes missed nothing. They were the eyes of an analyst, a strategist, constantly cataloging, assessing. Her voice, when she spoke, was a calm, measured alto, devoid of emotional inflection, which only served to further isolate her from the boisterous, testosterone-fueled environment of the outpost. She was organizing a tray of plasma expanders when Sergeant Caleb Vance swaggered in, flanked by a sycophant, Medic Leo Klein. Vance was a man built on a foundation of insecurity, his recent promotion earned through bureaucratic maneuvering rather than battlefield valor. He compensated with an aggressive, chest-thumping bravado that grated on the nerves of the veteran soldiers. His jaw was perpetually clenched, and his eyes held the nervous energy of a man terrified of being exposed as a fraud. Well, look what we have here, Vance boomed, his voice echoing unnaturally in the tent. Still playing Dr. Doll? The nickname had stuck the moment she'd arrived. The Doll. It was a label born of their inability to reconcile her porcelain skin and delicate features with the grit and grime of their world. To them, she was an ornament, a fragile thing to be either protected or more often mocked. Leo Klein, a man whose medical knowledge came exclusively from textbooks and whose ego was as inflated as his gut, chimed in with a sneer. "Careful with those, Doctor," he said, gesturing to the medical supplies with a condescending flick of his wrist. "Wouldn't want you to chip a nail. Real medicine is a bit more robust than what you're used to." Aris didn't look up. Her hands, steady and precise, continued their work. "The protocols for hypovolemic shock are universal, Klein. Robustness doesn't compensate for incompetence." Her response was delivered with the same dispassionate calm she used to count sutures, yet it landed with the force of a slap. Vance's face tightened. He hated her composure, her refusal to be rattled. It was a challenge to his authority. He took a deliberate step closer, pretending to inspect a nearby chart, and with a clumsy, accidental pivot, slammed his elbow into her tray. Plasma bags, sterile needles, and gauze packets clattered to the dusty floor. "Whoops," Vance grunted, a smirk playing on his lips. "My mistake. You should be more careful where you leave your toys." For a single, charged moment, the tent fell silent. Every eye was on Aris. They expected tears, a flash of anger, a frustrated sigh, any sign of weakness. Instead, she slowly knelt, her movements fluid and economical. Her emerald eyes met Vance's, and for the first time, he saw something flicker in their depths. It wasn't fear or anger. It was analysis. It was the cold, detached look of a predator assessing a lesser creature's flawed attack pattern. "No problem, Sergeant," she said, her voice a placid lake of calm. "Gravity is a universal protocol as well. It's a shame you haven't mastered it." She began collecting the scattered items, her focus absolute. Klein snickered, but Vance felt a prickle of unease. He had intended to humiliate her, but somehow, he was the one who felt exposed. The jackals had snapped at the doll, and the doll hadn't even flinched. The incident with the tray solidified Aris's reputation. The nickname, the doll, became more prevalent, a constant, low-grade hum of disrespect that followed her across the outpost. Soldiers would make a show of holding doors for her, with exaggerated gallantry, or offer to lift supply boxes she was already carrying with ease. It was a campaign of 1,000 tiny cuts, designed to remind her that she was an outsider, a fragile anomaly in their hardened world. Yet, a few were beginning to see the cracks in the porcelain facade. Nora Finch, a veteran medic in her late 30s with 3 tours under her belt and eyes that saw more than they let on, was the first. Nora had earned her respect through quiet competence, not volume. She watched Aris with a growing sense of professional curiosity. One afternoon, while restocking the trauma bay, Nora saw Aris effortlessly hoist a crate of saline solution that made 2 younger privates grunt with effort. It wasn't just strength, it was technique. Aris lifted from her core, her balance perfect, her movements betraying a level of physical conditioning that was far beyond what a civilian doctor would need. Later that week, a flight of helicopters roared overhead. Chinooks, a young soldier, commented casually. 2 CH-47s and UH-60 Black Hawk escort. Aris corrected him without looking up from the inventory list she was writing on a ruggedized data slate. The Black Hawk is a Mike variant. You can tell by the wider chord rotor blades. The accuracy was startling. It wasn't the knowledge of a hobbyist. It was the ingrained recognition of a professional. Nora filed the observation away. The most telling detail, however, was something Nora discovered by chance. She had borrowed Aris's medical shears and, upon returning them, noticed Aris's hands as she took them back. From a distance, they looked soft and pale. But up close, Nora saw them. A series of faint, strategically placed calluses on her palms and at the base of her fingers. They weren't the calluses of Dr. They were the distinct, hardened patterns left by the checkered grip of a pistol and the handguard of a rifle. There's more to her than meets the eye, Nora confided in her most trusted colleague one evening, her voice low. She's a ghost. She moves like one, thinks like one. While the others mocked, Aris was observing. Her calm exterior was a shield, behind which her mind was a whirlwind of activity. Vance's leadership is performative, she noted internally as she cleaned surgical instruments. He relies on intimidation to mask a lack of tactical acumen. In a crisis, he will hesitate. She watched Klein fumbling a simple for insertion. Klein's arrogance is a liability. His knowledge is theoretical, untested by stress. He will panic. She cataloged the outpost's defensive blind spots, the predictable patrol routes, the response times of the quick reaction force. Her mind, trained by years of operating in environments where a single miscalculation meant death, was building a threat assessment matrix of her own supposed allies. She wasn't enduring their mockery. She was studying their weaknesses. The doll wasn't just sitting on the shelf. She was mapping the entire playroom, noting every exit, every potential weapon, and every fragile piece waiting to be broken. The calm was not serene, it was predatory. The crisis, when it came, arrived with the deafening roar of an IED. It was a scorching Tuesday afternoon, the air thick with heat and boredom, when the emergency sirens ripped through the outpost's lethargy. A supply convoy had been hit 6 miles out. Casualties were inbound. The medical tent exploded into a frenzy of controlled chaos. Staff rushed to prepare trauma bays, their movements sharp with adrenaline. Medic Leo Klein, eager to prove his robust capabilities, began shouting orders, his voice an octave too high. Sergeant Vance appeared at the tent flap, his face pale, the color of old parchment. The reality of command was a far cry from the swagger he projected. The first casualty was carried in by 2 soldiers, their faces grim. It was Private Sam Jones, a fresh-faced kid barely 19. His right leg was a horrifying ruin of shredded uniform, flesh, and bone. A dark, pulsing pool of crimson was spreading rapidly on the stretcher beneath him. Femoral arteries severed. One of the soldiers yelled, his voice cracking. Tourniquets on, but he's losing blood fast. Klein rushed forward, his textbook knowledge colliding with the gruesome reality. He fumbled with his gloves, his eyes wide with panic. Get me hemostatic clamps. A vascular kit. Someone call for a surgical evac now. His hands trembled as he tried to assess the wound, clearly overwhelmed. The other medics scrambled, their frantic energy only adding to the chaos. Jones's life was draining away with every tick of the clock. That's when Aris moved. She didn't run, she flowed. With a quiet, step aside, she moved through the panicked medics like a phantom. Her voice, though soft, carried an undeniable weight of authority that cut through the noise and made everyone freeze. Klein opened his mouth to protest, to assert his authority, but the look in Aris's emerald eyes silenced him. The doll was gone. In her place stood a commander. Her hands, no longer just graceful, became instruments of surgical genius. Her fingers probed the mangled flesh for less than a second before finding the source of the bleeding, applying precise pressure that immediately slowed the torrent. "Sam," she said, her voice calm and steady, a lifeline in the storm of his pain and fear. "My name is Aris. You're going to be okay. I need you to breathe with me. In and out." Her eyes scanned the chaotic tent, not for help, but for tools. Her gaze landed on a discarded tent pole clamp and a bottle of isopropyl alcohol. To the others, it was junk. To her, it was a solution. In seconds, she had sterilized the clamp. With movements too fast and practice to be anything but second nature, she isolated the severed artery. The bleeding stopped. The entire tent had fallen into a stunned, reverent silence. But she wasn't finished. Grabbing a suture kit, her hands began to work a miracle. Her stitches were perfect, each not a masterpiece of economy and function. It wasn't just first aid, it was advanced vascular surgery, performed on a dirt floor with improvised tools under unimaginable pressure. For minutes, from the moment she said, "Step aside," to the final, perfect knot, it took 4 minutes. She had stabilized him, saved him, and rewritten the rules of what was possible. She stood up, peeling off her blood-soaked gloves. The silence was broken only by the distant whir of the incoming evac helicopter. Every single person in that tent, Vance, Klein, Nora, the soldiers, stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. The fragile doll had just performed a medical miracle. Vance found his voice, a choked whisper. How did you do that?" Aris met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "I paid attention during my training, Sergeant." The simple, truthful statement felt like a devastating indictment of everyone else in the room. The 4-minute miracle shattered the social hierarchy of Outpost Kestrel. The mockery didn't just stop. It was replaced by a thick, palpable mixture of awe, confusion, and a healthy dose of fear. Soldiers who once snickered at her now averted their gaze or offered a hesitant nod of respect. They spoke of her in hushed tones, the story of the surgery taking on the quality of a legend. Klein avoided her completely, his professional ego in tatters. He had panicked while she had performed flawlessly. The contrast was a public humiliation he couldn't escape. Vance, for his part, tried to reassert his authority by burying himself in paperwork, but his bluster was gone, replaced by a sullen, watchful silence. He knew he had fundamentally misjudged the woman he called the doll, and the unknown scope of his error gnawed at him. Nora Finch, however, was driven by a need for answers. Her suspicions had been validated in the most dramatic way possible. One evening, as Aris was meticulously cleaning her improvised surgical tools, Nora approached her. "That wasn't just good field medicine, Aris," Nora began, her voice low and direct. "That was a microvascular anastomosis. That's something a top-tier trauma surgeon might attempt in a sterile OR. Not here. Where did you really learn that?" Aris paused her cleaning, her hands still for a fraction of a second. She turned, her emerald eyes meeting Nora's. There was no deception in them, only a calm, impenetrable wall. "In a place where you either learn fast or you don't learn at all," she replied, her voice even. "Efficiency is all that matters when a life is on the line. The rest is just noise." It was a non-answer, a deflection so smooth it was an art form. Nora knew she would get no more. Later that night, the outpost settled into its uneasy routine. Under the cloak of darkness, Aris made her way to the communications tent. To any casual observer, she was just another contractor making a scheduled call home. But she didn't go to the civilian satellite phones. She moved to a darkened corner, to a terminal that was supposed to be reserved for encrypted intelligence transmissions. From a hidden pocket in her cargo pants, she produced her ruggedized data slate. It wasn't a commercial tablet. It was a piece of military-grade hardware sealed against dust and water, with a screen that emitted no backlight. She pressed her thumb to a sensor, and the device unlocked with a silent flash. Connecting it to the terminal, she began typing, her fingers flying across the virtual keyboard. The message was a string of alphanumeric codes and concise, clipped phrases. It was a language of shadows and secrets. Nightingale to Aegis. Package stabilized post-critical event. Compromise risk elevated but manageable. Local assets remain unaware of primary objective. Awaiting storm protocols. Kestrel's vulnerabilities are significant. In transmission, she sent the message into the ether, a ghost whisper that bypassed all of the Outpost's conventional channels. The reply was almost instantaneous, a single line of text appearing on her slate. Aegis to Nightingale. Acknowledged. Storm is imminent. Stand by to execute. Your cover is now secondary to mission success. Show your colors if necessary. Out. Aris disconnected the slate, her face impassive. She slipped the device back into her pocket and walked out of the tent, melting back into the shadows of the outpost. The signals had been sent. The storm was coming, and the Nightingale was ready to hunt. The storm broke just before dawn. It began not with thunder, but with the synchronized, shrieking wail of the outpost's alert sirens. Red lights strobed across the compound, painting the panicked faces of scrambling soldiers in hellish hues. This wasn't a random potshot or a probing attack. This was a coordinated, multi-pronged assault. Mortar fire on the south perimeter, snipers on the eastern ridge. The radio channels crackled with frantic, overlapping reports. Vance's voice came over the net, high and strained. All units, defensive positions. Sector 2 is taking heavy fire. Where's my support? His commands were reactive, chaotic, the death rattle of a leader who had already lost control. In the midst of the escalating pandemonium, Aris moved with a chilling sense of purpose. As other non-combatants scrambled for the hardened bunkers, she walked calmly to the rear of the medical tent. She knelt beside a large, unassuming metal footlocker marked humanitarian aid fragile. With a series of precise clicks, she unlocked a false bottom. The sight within would have sent Vance into cardiac arrest. On one side, nestled in pristine foam, lay neatly organized medical supplies, syringes, advanced clotting agents, and surgical kits that made the Outpost standard inventory look like a child's plaything. On the other side lay the tools of a different trade. A disassembled state Route 25 designated marksman rifle, its components gleaming darkly. A custom-fit tactical vest, a sidearm, and a set of dog tags that read, Thorne A, Delta SFOD, Nightingale. The transformation was instantaneous. The oversized medical scrubs were shed, revealing the lean, powerful physique of an elite operator clad in lightweight tactical gear. The severe bun was loosened, her auburn hair quickly tied back for combat. The last vestige of Dr. Aris Thorne, the civilian, vanished. In her place stood Nightingale, a warrior. The first friendly casualty report screamed over the radio. Man down. Command bunker. Sniper fire from the ridge. Before anyone could react, Nightingale was moving. She didn't run towards cover. She ran towards a firing position, assembling the state Route 25 with a fluid efficiency that was both beautiful and terrifying. She scaled a stack of sandbags at the edge of the compound, exposing herself for a terrifying 3 seconds as she settled the rifle, the high-powered scope coming to her eye. Through the optic, she saw him, an enemy sniper 700 meters out, preparing his next shot. She factored in wind, distance, and drop in a heartbeat. Her breathing slowed to a single, controlled exhale. Crack! The suppressed shot was a whisper in the roar of battle. 700 meters away, the sniper's world vanished. Without pause, her scope swept the ridge. There, a second spotter team. Crack! The spotter fell. Crack! The sniper beside him collapsed. Another radio call. "We've got a machine gun nest pinning down Bravo team." Nightingale's scope swung east. She saw the muzzle flashes. It was a difficult shot, the nest partially obscured by rock formations. She waited. A burst of fire gave her a clear view of the gunner's head for less than a second. Crack! The machine gun went silent. For shots. For kills. 8 seconds. A stunned silence fell over the command radio channel. Jesus Christ. Who is making those shots? The base commander's voice stammered. Is that one of our guys? Nightingale was already gone, melting away from the firing position. She was now moving toward the sound of the fighting, her rifle held at a low ready, her emerald eyes cold and focused. The enemy had planned for soldiers. They had planned for medics. They had not planned for a ghost who was both, a lethal nightingale who could take a life with the same precision she used to save one. The hunt had just begun. As the tide of the battle turned, a new sound cut through the chaos. The distinct, blade-whipping thrum of a helicopter, but one unlike any in Kestrel's regular rotation. It was sleek, black, and devoid of any markings. An MHX Ghost alone, a ghost of an aircraft that officially didn't exist. It landed with an unnerving quietness in the center of the compound, its rotors barely disturbing the air. Even as sporadic gunfire continued at the perimeter. The ramp lowered, and a woman emerged who commanded authority with her very presence. She was Colonel Eva Rostova. Her uniform was crisp, her silver hair was pulled into a tight, regulation bun, and the array of ribbons on her chest told a story of a long and storied career in the shadows of military intelligence. Even the base commander, Captain Miller, instinctively straightened his posture. "I'm here for my asset," Rostova announced, her voice cutting through the noise, directed at Miller but intended for everyone within earshot. "Specialist Thorne's mission is complete." Miller stared, bewildered. "Ma'am? Dr. Thorne is a civilian contractor. A medic." Rostova fixed him with an icy glare that could freeze fire. "Dr. Thorne holds a PhD in biomedical engineering, which she earned before enlisting. She is also Specialist Aris Thorne of the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Her call sign is Nightingale. She has served 3 combat tours, is a recipient of a Silver Star for Valor, and has more confirmed saves under fire than any other medic in the Special Operations community. Her presence here was part of a deep cover operational assessment of this region's threat capabilities, an assessment which is now, quite clearly, concluded. The revelation detonated in the minds of the surrounding soldiers. Vance, who was trying to organize an ammunition count nearby, froze mid-word, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. Klein, hiding near the medical supplies, looked as if he might faint. The woman they had tormented, the doll they had dismissed, was not just a soldier. She was a bona fide hero, a member of the most elite unit in the U.S. military. Their petty harassment was suddenly cast in a new, horrifying light. They had been abusing a legend. Aris appeared then, moving from the front line. Her tactical gear was covered in dust and a smear of blood, someone else's. She gave Rostova a curt, professional nod. "Outstanding work, Nightingale," Rostova said, the respect in her voice genuine. The consequences were swift and severe. An official inquiry was launched. Vance was stripped of his rank and faced a court-martial for conduct unbecoming and harassment of a fellow service member. His career was over. Klein was dishonorably discharged, his medical license placed under review for gross professional misconduct. Their attempts to belittle a superior operator had destroyed them. The intelligence Aris had gathered on both the enemy's tactics and the outpost deficiencies led to a complete overhaul of the sector's defensive strategy, saving countless future lives. Before she boarded the Ghost alone, Aris stopped by the infirmary. Sam Jones, the young private whose life she had saved, was awake and lucid. "I knew it," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I knew you were different. Thank you." Aris allowed a rare, small smile to touch her lips. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Remember, Sam," she said, her voice losing its operational coldness and regaining a hint of the doctor's warmth. The most resilient steel is often wrapped in the softest velvet. Use your eyes to see, but use your heart to judge. She turned and walked to the waiting helicopter without a backward glance, leaving a legacy of awe, shame, and a hard-learned lesson in her wake. Have you ever been completely wrong about someone based on their appearance? Share your story in the comments below, and let's talk about why we should look deeper. Please, always comment with respect. Your stories matter. And if this one moved you, consider hitting that subscribe button and sharing it with someone who needs to see that strength comes in the most unexpected packages.